Okay, there.
Okay, are we ready to go?
I'm ready, yeah. I started the other recording too.
Okay. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I know we're getting started just a little bit late, but we have some folks here from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. We have Meredith Hammond. We have Dana Hecht, Galiel Figueroa. Am I pronouncing that right? I apologize. Jay Pandya, and we have Dylan Zink and Raj. I didn't get your name last name. What's that? And they're going to start. What we're going to do this morning is we're going to let Raj and Meredith and Dana tell us what the project is, give us a briefing on what is expected in a couple years on the Route 202 bridge between Bedminster and Far Hills. And then we're going to open it up for comments and questions. And we have a podium right there in the middle of the aisle. We are trying to record. We are recording this on video and audio, so that we did get a lot of comments saying this is 10 in the morning. I can't come out to it on a Monday at 10, so we're recording it to hope to have it on the website later this week. The marching orders we got. This is the third meeting we've had on this in the region since August, and we talked to the DOT originally and said we wish to provide input to NJDOT, each municipality, by the end of the year. We set a goal for November, so the sooner the better. So what we would like is as much word to get out on this as possible, and as much feedback from the public and the stakeholders as possible. So with that, Meredith, do you want to get us started?
Just one more. There is a sign-in sheet going around. Trina has a sign-in sheet, so if anyone has not signed in, please do so. This way we can make sure that if there is any new information comes out, if there's any subsequent meetings, that you can be informed of those developments.
And Meredith, if you want, the podium microphone is a wireless. If you and Raj want to use that, that would be fine until we get to the comment portion. Is that?
Can you hear me? Let me just, okay.
My name is Meredith Hammond, as the mayor mentioned, and I'm with the Office of Community Relations. I am the regional manager for Somerset County, and I like saying that because sometimes there are projects that go on beyond the project you hear today. Sometimes there are issues on your state roads that are not part of this project, but you need to report it to somebody. I'm the somebody. So I don't have cards, but I can give you that number, which is easy to remember, 609-530-2110. And if you go on our website, you'll find the number. I'm not going to get into details for the project because we have a wonderful design team here. However, I want to let you know that this is not going to be the last meeting. There will be what we refer to as PICs, Public Information Centers, that will go on during the process, where we will send out mailers to the community, the business owners and property owners, and make them aware of the project and give them opportunity to come out and meet us and give their input as well. And at that time, we'll have display boards up and another team sitting around here, and it'll take about 3 or 4 hours. It'll be open. Usually we do it from like 4 to 7, 5 to 8, so that people can come after work and give their input. It's very informal. They come in after work, speak for about 10 minutes to us, go back out, leave their comments. We are diligent in getting our responses back out to the community. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dana. Okay. Great.
Thanks, Meredith. I'm Dana Hecht. I'm with Project Management. I'm the manager for which this project falls under. My counties go from Sussex County to Ocean. We're Team B, from the mountains to the sea, we like to say. This is a bridge replacement project, and it's is structurally and functionally obsolete, which means that there's structural deficiencies. It is not unsafe, but there are deficiencies that need to be addressed that have been identified through our bridge inspection program that have led us to the point where we are in concept development, which is the first phase of work. That's why we're out early with public meetings and getting input, and functionally obsolete, which has to do with the width and the shoulders and lane widths of the bridge. As Meredith said, this is not the last project. We will have public info centers. Concept development is where we're trying to come up with the preliminary alternative for the bridge, the impacts to the communities, what we can do to lessen those impacts. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't remove the impact, but we work with the communities directly to minimize and put in measures that will make it as easy for the impacted, the schools, the emergency services, and that's why we're here today. So for the technical aspect and the overview, I will turn it over to our design team, Raj.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Raj Nolurkar. I work for URS. We are the consultants on this team. So we'll go through the background, the goals, and as Dana pointed out, and you'll see from the pictures that I'll present in a few minutes, this bridge is really served literally almost 100 years old by the time it gets to construction, right? It was built back in 1922. And so what we're trying to do here is find a cost-effective means of replacing this bridge. There's not much we can do to rehab this bridge. You know, sometimes you have projects that can be rehabilitated and fixed, but this particular case, we're looking at a full replacement, right? So we need to do that in such a way that we minimize the impacts. We can't eliminate the impacts, but we'll certainly look at options of minimizing those. So I'll present a few options to show you what was looked at. Again, this is a concept development where we just look at various ideas, we brainstorm, we look at some ideas, and then we present them, and obviously one of those ideas will make the most sense. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Some of the numbers that you see up front there, it simply means the bridge is safe. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it doesn't meet the current requirements. 36 tons would be a good number to remember. That's what legal loads are on our bridges, and that's what we like to build it. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So this way your bridge is, right down the middle of the screen. You have the Far Hills Fairgrounds on the right-hand corner. We are basically to the left, way before even 202 North, which heads to the right in this picture. Okay, next one, please. All right, so here's some pictures. Unfortunately, with the lights, it's hard to see. But you can see the extent of deterioration. I mean, the photograph in the middle is supposed to be a joint where it separates the approach with the bridge. As you can see, it has been paved over, and there's continued to be cracking, and there's a lot of load, asphalt load that is added onto the bridge. Some pictures at the bottom. I think the one on the left is showing you the first aid squad at Far Hills, right? So it's important to be aware that there are some units out there right adjacent to the bridge. In case they need to use a bridge and we're shutting down this bridge, we need to coordinate these type of things with them. Let me show you some pictures of the bridge itself from underneath. As you can see, these are all attributed to water damage. Years and years of flooding. Every time the water goes up and down, it takes a bite out of the concrete, right? So these are water-related damage. You can see the abutments on the top right-hand corner. A big chunk of concrete is about to fall off. And the other side of the bridge deck is not doing well either. Some more pictures, just to show you the conditions. There is a fiber optic line on the bridge. Obviously, it will have to be relocated during the replacement of this bridge. You can see the portion of the sidewalk on the bottom left corner. It's been shored up temporarily. I mean, that's pretty much doing its job. But again, I mean, there's not much we can fix, right? This bridge is basically steel beams. If you look closely on the top left corner, they've been encased in concrete. That's one reason why this bridge really survived this long. Just steel bridge won't have, right? So the concrete encasement protected this bridge for quite some time. All right. So kind of get the idea, and this is a picture taken back in 2009. I think it's Irene storm. You can see the devastation it can cause. So yes, this bridge replacement is required, but I also want to tell you that we're not necessarily going to be able to alleviate the entire flooding, right? That's not possible. So what we can do is maybe reduce the extent of the floodplain just a little bit, because DEP rules, won't get into details about this, they don't allow us to open up the bridge and let the water go to the next town. It just doesn't work like that. Okay. All right, so let's get into what the proposed alternative at this point we believe is going to look like. Would be a two-span structure instead of three. The current bridge, if you look before, in the photograph showed you two columns in the water. In the future, it will have one column, and basically we're looking at a concrete structure, which is a box girder, which is precast, made elsewhere, brought to the site, put in its place, and then you have a concrete topping, which forms the roadway. So we'll get into how do we build this in place of the existing. Well, we had series of meetings, as the mayor pointed out. Today is the third meeting. We had meeting with Far Hills in September. And they expressed that, at least one lane should be maintained throughout construction, which means for emergency purposes, whether it's police, the fire, or even the ambulance service, they expressed their concern that we need to maintain one lane. We also looked at a complete shutdown. A complete shutdown is where basically the traffic is not allowed to go across, right? And that allows the contractors to work a lot more safely and a lot more quickly, which makes the inconvenience that's caused to the people that live around in this area to the minimum possible. We also were told that there is a sidewalk needed. Currently, the bridge has a sidewalk only on the north side of the bridge. There was expressed interest in seeing the sidewalk on the other side of the bridge as well. We looked at that, and fortunately, in this particular case, we are able to accommodate that because the right-of-way on either side of the bridge is there. We also look at traffic patterns during construction. More importantly, we want to try and avoid what is known as cattle chute, where the lanes are kind of spread out and you have traffic maintained through with a small width of the roadway. So let me show you the alternatives. Pictures are always better than just words. So we looked at so far about 4 alternatives, right? The first one was full shutdown with one lane maintained for emergency access only. These are not for residents, so it's kind of only for fire, police, and ambulance services. An approximate duration, these numbers will change plus or minus a little bit as we refine the design. Currently, we're looking at about 15 months, so that's 1 year and 3 months. A full shutdown with a temporary pedestrian bridge, which accommodates, if school children or any pedestrians want to go across the bridge. That type of option would look at about 9 months. It does allow accelerated construction because we don't have to maintain that one lane. And then we looked at other ones which are traditional, right? One which have a signal at PPAC Road that is synchronized with the existing signal. So you kind of think of it as only one lane at a time can cross the bridge. The signal turns red for the other side, it'll stop, and then, it's called the bidirectional lane change. All right, so that's one, and that'll take about 16 months to do. It's literally similar to the maintaining one lane, which is the first option, right? And finally, we looked at, what happens when you maintain the traffic all throughout construction, which means one lane each direction. Well, that takes the longest, obviously. So that's about literally almost 2 years. So let me show you in a cross section what this looks like. So this is a two-way alternative, which is, if you want to maintain both lanes, one lane each direction open during construction, this is what it's going to look like. Obviously, we start on the south side, remove the section of the roadway, and then continue the construction. So let's keep looking at various sections happening here. So you can see the split. You're building half the structure at a time. In the cross section, if you look closely, those are the new structure on the right-hand side of the sketch, while the left-hand side of the structure is getting demolished and new construction is going on. With this sequence, we can maintain 2 lanes at all points, right, during the construction. And finally, the cross section that will achieve out of this would be, go to the next one, would be 2 11-foot lanes or 12-foot lanes with a gore area in the middle that allows for that left turn slot, which is at the existing condition anyway, to allow for that left turn onto PPAC Road. And you'll notice that there are 2 sidewalks on both sides. Currently, there is a sidewalk only on the upper side of the structure. In final configuration, you'd have a sidewalk on the bottom half as well. Let's keep going. So this is, again, a close-up view of those same thing. If you want to take a look at, we have some copies here. you can take a look. But currently, if you look in the top left-hand corner, you have 11-foot lane in each direction with the median stripe for, the eventual left turn and P-Pack road. In the proposed condition, you would have two 11-foot lanes, two shoulders, 8-foot wide, which could be used as a bicycle path as well as a shoulder, plus two 6-foot sidewalks. So this becomes a structure that is not obsolete as the existing one, and will meet the requirements of the roadway. Obviously, any future work on 202 would be required to address the configuration. Otherwise, this is just a snapshot at the bridge alone, not necessarily the approaches, right? A full sidewalk, full shutdown rather, and maintaining one lane. These are just the different sequences that shows us that we can maintain one lane during construction at all points and still achieve the same type of construction. So we don't see any fatal flaws, so to speak, that yes, this type of bridge can be built in its place without any major widening or anything of that nature, no temporary bridge, any massive construction. Like I said earlier, these box beams that you see on the bottom right-hand corner are precast elements. They're made elsewhere and they're brought to the site and placed. And so it's, relatively speaking, quicker process, right? So here you go. So that's the full width, if you look closely, is about 60 feet out to out, the width of the bridge, whereas the existing one is about 38 feet, 10 inches. So let's just say the bridge gets widened by almost about 20 feet. We looked at some traffic. It's always important to understand what the traffic path is, where people are coming from, where they're going. And you'll see both in the northbound and the southbound direction, there are two distinct peaks, which is usually what we normally see. One in the morning, so you have about 650 vehicles per hour between the time of 7 a.m. to about 9 o'clock in the morning. And likewise in the evening hours, afternoon hours, you'll see the same amount of traffic. Likewise, on the southbound, you see a little bit less traffic, but nonetheless, two distinct peaks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So this tells us that you can't really maintain one lane and use it for both, right, northbound, southbound, because you're going to affect either one of them. So we looked at alternate routes. We looked at, this is basically a lot of information here. This is telling you from a traffic engineer's point of view what the level of service is. The level of service A is the best, F obviously is the worst. And just to give you an idea what that means, if you were approaching a signal light and it turns red, and then it eventually turns green, and if you can't make it through the intersection while the signal turns red again, that's level of service E, right? So if you pass through the intersection, then it's only a matter of what the delay is, and you either get an A or a B or a C or a D, right? So we looked at all of that stuff here, and obviously we're trying to make sure that in future your level of service is not any worse than what it is. So we want to make sure that we do the construction, and in the end we'll have a level of service that's acceptable. Let's look at some detour options that we looked at. So there are detours possible. It's just that the distance-wise they're a little bit longer, right? For instance, if you were to take the 287 White Neck Road, primary detour routes. These are routes that are important for truck traffic. I would think that residents that live here would have to do this, because obviously you know the neighborhood. And so we can't, as an engineer, we can't force traffic to go through residential areas, right? So local traffic will end up doing it just because they know the area. But for truck purposes, which is about 10% of the traffic volume, we would sign the highways so that they know that you should not use 202 during the construction. So it's about 10-mile additional distance, but from time point of view, it's not all that much. It's about 15 minutes, which would be, the delay you would get just by sitting in construction area, right? So 15 minutes of time would be the additional time required for these detours. We looked at some local streets here. Old Dutch Road, looks like these are the highways that roads rather are used even when you have flooding issues or others, routine maintenance going on, and you need this. So, we could look at all these alternatives if that's, it's going to be there during construction, right? So it really comes down to which alternative do we want? Do we want the full shutdown? Do we want to maintain two lanes at all points? And the trade-off is, if you have a full shutdown, you get the construction done a lot more quickly, a lot more safely, and a lot more, with the detours, it's just going to take time, right? It's going to take about 2 years. So I understand, if that's a problem, it takes too long. It sounds like more of an inconvenience. So these are the type of studies we've looked at currently. Excellent. Yeah, that is. It'll be cheaper as well because obviously when the contractor can get in, get out a lot quickly, the cost of construction is lower as well. But more importantly, like Dana said, I think we want to make sure that the quality is not compromised. When you have traffic adjacent to area which is getting built, just the sheer nature of vibration movements can cause concrete to crack, right? So it's just some things that we have to be aware of and sometimes deal with. So what we're saying here is we would prefer to see a full shutdown if that's acceptable to the neighborhood here. That's really what we'd like to see happen here. There are detours in place. We've done a survey of the area. I mean, nobody knows better than you, that you live in this area and you know what the local detours are. So we can get in there, demolish this bridge, put a new one in, and walk away from it for a long, long time to come, right? So the other thing I want to point out is when you have these old bridges, right, when you're doing demolition, there is some element of risk that one has to inherit because you have a bridge that was built back in 1922. When you start cutting those up and you expose yourself to some unforeseen conditions that could cause emergency type of things. So full shutdown would eliminate those surprises. So at the end, right, we know a two-way traffic, if that's the only choice we have, it is possible to maintain that. Unfortunately, it'll take the longest duration. We mentioned that. All vehicles should be able to cross this bridge during construction. We are aware that pedestrians do use this area, and we should be able to provide that as well. I will not get into the design features. Obviously, every project, anytime we do any project, we want to ensure that we eliminate all existing substandard features, whether they're lane widths or shoulders, sidewalk widths, etc. All of those things will be addressed in this project. So it's a brand new bridge. It meets the current standards, right? So that's really the purpose of this project. And with that, I think if you have any questions, we could answer those. But again, the two choices are full shutdown, which is what we really favor, cuts down the cost, improves the quality. It is safer for a contractor to work when there's no pedestrians, no regular traffic in that vicinity. It allows him to use equipments and get done much quickly. Okay, that's all we have today.
Folks want to come up and ask a question just for the audio recording? Well, it's video, but you won't be seen. Come right up to the podium and speak into that mic so we can hear your question. Now's the time to ask.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm Bill Muller. I'm the mayor of Peapack Gladstone. Is the possibility existing of creating something resembling a pontoon bridge, which would be a completely separate structure? It seems to me that on the Far Hills Fairgrounds section, there appears to be ample land available to create approaches and departures from such a bridge.
Well, let me, when you said pontoon.
Well, I know pontoon bridge is a misnomer, but what I'm speaking about is some sort of a temporary structure which would allow you to full closure of the bridge, short construction time. Obviously, this whole thing is pointed at businesses on both sides of the bridge that would be affected by a full closure.
Yeah.
I make that point because in Peapack Gladstone, Somerset County replaced a bridge. They ran into unforeseen issues that dragged the project out way longer than anybody anticipated, to the extent that a business owner alleged that the failure of their business was related to the closure of the bridge.
Well, it's a good comment. What we normally try to do is to minimize the environmental impacts, right? So there are wetlands and there are sensitive areas around the bridge. So when we work within the existing footprint, you're really trying to avoid any sort of impacts, right? Once you get into putting a temporary bridge either on the south side or the north side of the existing bridge, you're now requiring an embankment with retaining walls to be built just to get the traffic to line up with the temporary structure. and that could add a lot of permitting requirements to this project, right? So the DOT likes to do is try to maintain all construction activities within their right-of-way, and that's what we're trying to do here. I don't think, based on the review of existing information, if you were to consider a temporary bridge either on the north or the south side of the existing alignment, you are then automatically outside the right-of-way with the footprint, right? So a temporary bridge would have to be minimum about 30 feet wide just to maintain one lane each direction. In addition to that, you would have foundation work, which adds to the cost and duration of the project. And so we try to maintain traffic on the existing footprint while staging it. So in this particular case, because we were also looking at wider bridge, right, with the shoulder and two 11-foot lanes and the sidewalk, that actually helped the staging itself. So there is really no need for a temporary bridge in my opinion. And that's how we arrived at this.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
Raj, does the 22-month option essentially give you that without actually physically being another bridge?
Yes, it does that, Mayor.
Okay.
Morning. I'm representing the Bedminster School Board. So I have a number of questions for you. When you guys looked at the detour routes, did you take any consideration into the busing situations and the steepness of the streets and all that you are potentially sending these buses up or going on 287 and the existing amount of time that it would take to get across those routes?
Well, obviously, like we said earlier.
Old Dutch Road is really steep.
Yeah, I was
Right.
gonna say, if anybody's driven down that
Right.
car, it could be a magic school bus ride here if we send buses up and down that road. And it's a narrow situation there too, which could cause some issues.
You're absolutely correct. The thing is that it's a construction, right? I mean, clearly from the pictures, one has to understand that this bridge at some point has to go, right? So there's no doubt about that part.
Completely
Now,
understand. I'm just trying to
So-
get all our questions answered too. We have
That's
input.
exactly why we're here.
Yeah.
We're here not a month or two before construction starts, because we can certainly have meetings just with the school board to go over.
Okay, that's why I want to get
Well-
across our concerns.
we'll have to look at those needs and
That's
address
that's
them.
a safety concern. If you've got kids going on buses to 287 or even Dutch Road, our buses leave the high school in Bernardsville, or go to the high school, either way, whatever you want to say, and then go around, drop off the high schoolers, then get back to our school, which is off of 202. They can't make it now with existing traffic. It's a significant financial impact for us. We've had to split routes and everything like that already. So let's just take your 15 minutes for instance, we'd have to have 5 new bus routes, which in a small district like ours that has our cap, let's just say, you guys deal with caps at the state, we're a 2% cap, that would bust our cap right there. We'd have to start looking at not hiring teachers, not, potentially cutting salaries and all those things. So if the state wants to fund a little bit more of the project and give some of that for us for relief for a significant shutdown like that, just want to make that known to you guys. That's one of them. The other concern, I mean, I've seen other bridges go up a lot faster than this in a full shutdown situation. So if you were able to do, let's say, 4 months, I think you did a couple here locally, you could do a lot of the pre-site work since these bridges are going to be much wider. I'm not an engineer, of course, but you could do a lot more of that site work potentially and have everything cast and ready to go and do it over the summer. So it'd have a lot less impact on us. Maybe you could cut it to 4 months, and we're only talking about a few weeks here and there.
Yeah, I mean, look, would love to say that to you, but you'd probably get upset if that didn't happen, right?
Well,
So
of course we will.
nobody wants to promise something that is not
I'm not
realistic.
asking for a promise. I'm just looking at implications for us.
Bridges versus this one.
Right.
And full disclosure, I took over this group in July, so that was my first question.
Right.
Why can't we do a drop-in? There's a skew on this bridge, that place, and there's geometric constraints that allow you to do that for certain bridges and not others. Unfortunately, where this bridge is, it won't work for the prefab site.
We need to drag in piles,
Right, we have foundation. I mean, first of all,
plates, footings and everything, so it usually,
it's about 100 feet long, right, from one side to the other, and it's 40 feet wide. right? So demolition itself will take some time. And then you have to drive some cofferdams in order to build the piers in the center of the river. And you got to build the apartments on both sides. Then comes the precast elements. So we are looking at means to accelerate that, right? So, but within that comes the sequence and the time it takes to do things. And to say that it can be done very quickly, it's not really realistic. So
Well,
what can happen, and now that I understand your concern about the school, it's quite likely we have to go back and take a look and see if there's sequence in which we can shut it down for the summer when the schools are off, right? Get some of that done and then open up at least a lane which can be worked for school buses only. Now I know that's a nightmare where you're maintaining one lane on the bridge open, and how does the police department, all those people have to address that, because you don't want regular commuters now, parents that are dropping their kids off, showing up at the school on the same lane. So it becomes a little bit of a nightmare, but I'm not a cop. So,
well, I mean, get into safety stuff.
and those are the things. So
Right.
full shutdown basically eliminates anybody crossing, but we understand the grades, and we'll have to look at that further. But
Well, I just wanted to, make sure you guys are aware of those impacts.
so we are.
I mean, no offense to the businesses, everything like that. This is a significant impact to a small school district that, has no means unless the state's going to fund that for us and, give us a couple $100,000 for buses to go around or send in more buses or what have you. So, okay, I just would be, looking at some of the other bridges locally, they did do a lot quicker. So I know you're saying you can't, but we've done all kinds of bridges in this world, and Army Corps of Engineers comes in when they have to build something quickly. To the mayor's point, pontoon bridge, temporary bridge, something like that potentially could be done. Otherwise, you're forcing us into a partial lane closure, or doing one lane at a time, something like that. When it does seem like the best option would be to close it quickly and just get it done. So, I think that's it from my point right now.
Thank you.
Raj, one of the questions I have is that the detours you show are coming from the south, but we also have a fair amount of traffic that comes from the north and from the west as well. Have you considered those as alternative detours? I know earlier, I think one of the first presentations, you talked about Holland Road and then coming down through Peapack Gladstone.
I mean, those detours are still there. I mean, obviously, we'll have to address both north and south. And, I understand the grades, I understand the widths, and the sheer distances between the 2 points. And I think what we need to first agree to here, whether even a full shutdown is acceptable to you folks, because otherwise, we'll be spending a lot of time and effort trying to figure out detours and this and that. So I think we need to decide, in our minds at least, is if you want to keep 2 lanes open at all points, well, we showed you that's possible on the structure with or without a temporary bridge, right? So
Within the phasing that you and Dana just discussed, how long is the demolition anticipated?
So you're talking about the full shutdown option?
Well, if you're just, sure, let's go with that. If you're doing a full shutdown, how long is your demolition?
We came up with, about 6 weeks, plus or minus?
Yeah, for each stage.
Again, these are concept development level, right? So we get into, volume of concrete and access, where can the cranes be placed. So we look at a very conservative manner. When things go in that direction, maybe there's a way to save a couple of weeks, plus or minus, So we looked at it, and in about 6, because of the skew, because of the presence of water, because of wetlands, you kind of stuck in a situation where you got to work from both sides, right, and start the work in that fashion. So we estimated somewhere about 5 to 6 weeks is currently where we are.
So, but that is with the full shutdown. So you're going to take a different demolition approach for the full shutdown than you would for any of the other alternatives.
Absolutely. This full shutdown tells the contractor, again, doesn't have to be that careful, so to speak, right? So you can cut things much quickly. When you have to preserve one side of the bridge and maintain traffic on it, it puts all kinds of restrictions in place.
So as you heard from President Casella from the school board, the concept of targeting the summer season and then perhaps opening or reopening portions, it's going to be a little, it sounds like it's going to be problematic if you're doing all your demolition work, because then you're left with nothing and you're starting at scratch. You're starting anew. And as Mayor Mueller said, if you could do a temporary, some sort of temporary situation, but I think you've already told us that the temporary situation is not feasible other than a temporary pedestrian bridge.
Right, because if you have to put a temporary bridge, it has to be outside the footprint of where the existing bridge is, or the future bridge is going to be built. Otherwise, it's going to be in the way.
And
The ultimate problem with that is you all also saw the condition of the bridge. When you get into right-of-way and additional permitting, it would delay us actually being able to construct the new bridge, which obviously the department wants, because right-of-way process adds time, permitting process adds time. So,
in your full shutdown, you did indicate that there would still be a temporary pedestrian bridge walkway. How would that be constructed?
Well, a pedestrian bridge is a lot lighter, nowhere comparison to vehicular bridge, and those could be prefabricated structures, could be hoisted in place overnight, and that's all it is. It's really a very simple construction technique. I've seen even temporary bridges that are hung from the side of an existing bridge, with means of triangular brackets and things like that. Here, we're just trying to locate it once in an area. In this particular case, happens to be just outside the right-of-way. Which allows for the construction to not, interfere with the location of where the temporary bridge is, right? So we want to locate it a little bit further away from, future locations where new elements of the bridge are going to be installed. So the temporary bridge, about 5 feet wide, is a pretty simple structure.
Come on up, Emily. And the folks at the podium are not seen on the camera, so please just state your name so we know who's talking.
Okay,
Like
my
we
name
hear-
is Emily Childs. I live on Old Dutch Road. And I don't really have a question. I just wanted to, as formal as this is, express my hope, and I'm sure the hope of all of my neighbors on Old Dutch Road and Deer Haven and Stonehouse, that at no time Old Dutch Road is suggested as a detour. It is already, as Mr. Casella pointed out, it's narrow, it's barely 2-lane rides. My kids are in high school, I don't let them walk up and down, well, they have done it, but it's not my preference. It's already so dangerous. People use it as cut through already. They go too fast. And I mean, if you look at your traffic data, if you look at Route 206 going north during rush hour, it is already jammed up way down, so to add traffic to that, I mean, there's just no place for it to go during the Far Hills races. The VNA, we have cars just lined up, parked in front of my house because you can't get out the top and make a left onto 206 South during rush hour as it is. So I realize, like you said, people who live around here know that's a shortcut and they're gonna do it. And it's gonna be just a disaster for us. But I hope that at no time it is recommended that people take that as an alternative, because it's already bad as it is without this project. So that's all, not a question, just a statement.
And just to piggyback on Emily's comments, we have a project slated, I think, for next year to do a mill and overlay, some paving work on Old Dutch. I think our concern also from the township is that'll be great in 16 or 17, but in 21 or 22, after it's been 9 or 22 months worth of the locals' preferred detour, that road's going to be beat up again. So we're probably going to be looking to get some help on that. So.
The question is not just that it becomes a locals only detour, that it becomes, as Ms. Child said, a more formal official detour.
There are no sidewalks on Old Dutch Road, so, to Mr. Casella's point, there are two bus stops there currently, one with high school, two for the middle school, no sidewalks. It's already
Difficult.
tenuous. We're all surprised. Yeah.
Ms. Christie.
Hi, I'm Kathy Christie. I'm here to echo those exact same concerns over that exact same road. I live up in that area on Old Stonehouse, and that road currently is dangerous right now. And as you come out of that road, your proposed detour is to make a left onto 206. That left is unable to be made at this point. And to use that as a detour, I think it's very, very serious. I think it's a safety issue. I think if there could be some changes at the lights, so that you can pull out onto 206 left, I think that's something that really needs to be considered as well as the shape of the road. It's very dangerous.
Alicia Shower, Bedminster School District. I just wanted to ask if other detours have been explored that would provide a much safer dismissal and arrival for our students.
There was one north of Old Dutch Road.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we say detours here, we're not, these are not hard detours, right? Detours are for trucks, and those are going to be on 287. So we're not looking to, get truck traffic onto your neighbor. I mean, that was not the intent. If you came across saying that, I want to clarify right now, we're not looking to, get trucks into all these Old Dutch Road or other roads that are in the area. My point was, a quicker construction is beneficial, right? Now, I understand it comes with certain price, and that is a concern right now we're discussing, and I totally agree with you with your concerns. It's just that any detour, no matter which one we look at, is going to have similar issues. And so we need to then just quickly arrive at, say, maintain traffic where it is, which is on 202, and then we'll have to come up with 18 months, 22 months is what we looked at right now, and deal with the construction that part.
Excuse me, if I could just make a comment on the detours. I think we all say detour and
It's
don't
an
mean
alternate
detours.
route, yeah,
The detour is a signed route where everybody goes around.
that's right.
The Holland Road, the Old Dutch Road, that's the get-around route. That won't be signed as a detour. It won't be published as a detour.
Right.
But that's where people are going to go.
That's
So
exactly.
from a school planning perspective, you'd have to figure out what you would do. And obviously Holland Road makes more sense than Old Dutch Road, but it takes a little longer, but it doesn't take as long as going up 287. So that's, and again, I think part of it is individual planning versus DOT planning. DOT, I don't think anybody in the room wants you to sign Old Dutch Road or Holland Road as a detour.
That's right.
It's going to be what's going to happen, but that doesn't mean the school can't use that route because it makes sense to do that.
But then it's to be realistic about the timetable. That's not
Right.
Anyone driving on a 3 o'clock, no way it's going to turn it down. So it's just not feasible to get our city there.
Lou,
Understood.
Lou, maybe it's good. I mean, you talked about how the buses currently run. So, just from my kids taking the bus, the high school bus comes to my street around 7 o'clock in the morning, goes to the high school, and that's about a 15-plus minute drive. And if you're on the other side of Bedminster, where Mr. Casella lives, it's even a much longer bus ride to the high school. The buses go to Burnsville, they go through Far Hills to Burnsville, drop off the high school, turn around, come back, and then do their pickups for the Bedminster school, which is about an hour to an hour 15 later than the high school pickup. So that's between, I guess, between 8 and 8:30 or so.
Yeah, well, 8:15. Well, they start picking kids up in different parts about 8 o'clock. So they drop the kids at the high school at about 7:30. 7:35 is when they're supposed to be in, starting class. So it's even before some of your timetables, I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's significant, and of course we don't know where the students will be, now, but at least 3 to 5 buses go across there every morning now. So it's, I don't want to say every one of our buses. A few do go up the back way through the hills or up 287, but the most do access 202. And the only other thing I was going to say, I don't mean to be insensitive to the environment and the wetlands things here, but I mean, we're talking about safety on, children here and, people, you're worried about a pedestrian bridge. There's very few people walking across that bridge. We need a temporary real structure to get people across it, and I think that's town land, that's Far Hills land. I don't know what the permit process is different than, if I was a resident, but I just think we need to, worry a little bit more about the sensitivity on these children versus, the impact on the potential environment. If that bridge is crumbling and doing things there now already, well, let's face it, I don't think anybody's going to object to the, they're digging out and doing whatever they need to do a little bit faster. So,
Well, what we'll have to look at is see if that summer shutdown allows us to come up with a scheme that maintains one lane each direction on half of the width with no sidewalk and things of that nature. At this point, I don't know what the answer is, so we'll have to draw it out and take a look at it, and if that's possible, we'll report back. If not, we're basically back to where we are, 22 months of construction.
yeah, and if you need more information from the school district,
We
whatever,
understand.
please let us.
I mean,
Yeah, I'll make sure that Alicia is here and Superintendent Giordano's here too, so you can see the cost impact on us. I mean, you guys know, CAP now, we can't, to have 4 or 5 new buses go, it's $28,000 a bus. So you can imagine that impact on us for 2 years. Okay. Not to mention late duty for teachers and all that stuff. We have to pay them if the bus is 2 minutes late. Okay, we have to pay them a half an hour. So they're at least going to be a half an hour late. It's probably going to be an hour's worth of time at somebody making, how much. So please factor that in as well.
We do understand that the
Yeah.
work is an extremely important issue. We can work towards the fine tuning of it as we move along in the process. However, our biggest issue also is do we not want to move it full shutdown, partial. And if the community feels as though a fatal flaw is the school district not being able to get the buses through, we need to hear that that's the fatal flaw. And then we'll move accordingly.
Right. Well, I think part of the problem, I didn't even mention sports trips and field trips and all that stuff that go over that bridge too. But the problem is there's no viable detour routes that you're providing for us here. And we know the streets, that's not going to work for the folks that work on Old Dutch from a safety perspective. And then even going up to Willow or even going up to Pottersville Road with some of the kids is what we already started thinking about. Can we do that? But again, the buses just can't make that route back there. So we're all kind of locked in. It's either you guys do it really quick, or you have to do the two-year deal and and have access, which doesn't seem like to me an engineering benefit. It seems like some other way you can do that. I don't want to have a bad structure here, and you tell me I have to do this again in 50 years. We're all taxpayers here as well. So, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Raj, another question I have real quick. I wasn't exactly clear as to what the answer was on the eventual pedestrian access on the south side. Did we say that was possible?
Yes.
Or that it was an issue?
You can see the mayor on the cross section here. You see the sidewalks on both sides of the structure.
So the plan is
Yes.
pedestrian access both sides equally?
It works under this type of staging conditions.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I was unclear.
They want a sidewalk on the south.
So it's possible, and it will be included in the final design?
Yeah, that's what we're showing currently.
Okay.
yes.
Okay, terrific.
Thank
The
you.
sidewalk would go from the first aid building down to the intersection of Peapack
Peapack.
Road where that island is. That's what it's
There's,
On both, on the south side as well as the north side?
right.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
Further north, there is no sidewalk after the Peapack.
well, now,
For now.
for now. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Nancy Hunter. I'm the school business administrator for the Somerset Hills School District. I don't know if you're familiar, but the Somerset Hills School District is the Peapack, Gladstone, Far Hills, and Bernardsville, and we have the high school that Bedminster is sending to. In addition to the Bedminster buses, which will certainly be an issue, there are a number of students living in Peapack, Gladstone, and Far Hills that also will get transported across that part of 202. The part that I wasn't understanding is, if in the full shutdown scenario, would you still maintain a lane for buses? You're saying that's a possibility?
Well, that was the option that we described earlier. It was
Okay.
meant really for emergency vehicles. Now, when you start saying school buses only, what about the parents that are dropping off their kids in their own cars, right? I mean, that becomes a gray area now.
Right.
How does that factor? If it's only school bus, I think we could treat that as an emergency vehicle. But then when you start adding on to it, saying, all right, parents or, even students driving their cars to school, would they be allowed taking that route? And that
But
becomes a problem.
so it's not really a complete shutdown. In any situation, you would have one lane for emergency, forgetting the school bus.
No, there was two different choices.
Oh, two different choices.
One was maintaining one lane for emergency vehicles,
Emergency
and that's about 16 months or something like that, if I recollect, 15 months. And then we looked at a full shutdown. So full shutdown is a lot quicker only because the demolition aspects and reconstruction goes faster because there's no interference. The minute you maintain even one lane, even if it's emergency, the structure that remains behind to accommodate that one lane has to be protected properly. So that kind of puts restrictions. Right.
When I brought it to our board, their belief, based on what was explained, this was from the last meeting, was that there's no way we could accommodate this. So I guess we're following what the administrator is saying.
So we could maintain one lane. But
In other words, there has to be a way for the school buses to get through, because where cars could do maybe some of those other informal detours, a school bus really cannot make any of those turns. So other than go down to 287, which is not very safe and takes a while.
Thank you.
Too high for me. Patty Siegel. You seem to indicate if it was a partial shutdown, there was some risk that had to be assumed from the bridge, is what I took, that there was some safety risk with the bridge. Or can you just expand upon where you were going with that statement?
Again, if you look at the pictures, right, you have these concrete elements, the supports, the columns, the piers, and the abutments that have some damage associated with them. So when you start to cut them, there is a little bit of surprise that could happen, right? So that requires immediate repairs and protection. Those are the type of things that has to be done, right? If you committed to maintaining one lane, the contract is then required to maintain the structure in good condition. And that's what I was trying to say. Didn't mean to say that, going to be like, surprise, surprise, here you go, can't have anything on this bridge. That's not the intent. So, we all have to understand the bridge is like almost literally 100 years old by the time we go to construction. So there are things that can come up, and it's not the first time these things happen, and you have to address them. So we'll have to now, based on what I hear today, is to look at a faster construction technique, if possible, right? And see at the end of that summertime, in that 4 or 5 months, actually not even that, right? 3 months, maybe, June to September, 2.5 months. All right, so within that 9 weeks, we'll have to figure out, if it takes 6 weeks to demolish the structure, what can be put in its place to maintain 2 lanes, one in each direction, for at least school bus purposes. And Mr. Gopal will look at it. One lane.
So what type of risk?
You can build a structure to maintain 2 lanes, no sidewalk. Stage 2, is that wide enough? Is this wide enough to maintain 2 lanes from here to here? We'll have to take a look. All right.
Raj, in one of the earlier presentations, and just following up on the discussion of emergency services, you were talking about the traffic rating for some of the intersections, I guess focusing on the other side. But where the first aid building is located, in the event of a one-lane bidirectional, I imagine you're going to get a fair amount of queuing backing up in front of the first aid squad.
That's right.
So to some extent, I'll defer to the experts on that, but I would imagine that's concern that we would have getting emergency vehicles out in one of those queuing situations.
Yeah, that's why we looked at it really quick, and based on the traffic volume, we found out that wouldn't work at all. We'll just consider it because, a lot of times you see that as an option. Given that there was a traffic signal light there, we just didn't realize how many vehicles were out there when we were looking at those type of features. Once we looked at the traffic volume, we knew that it wasn't going to work. So it really comes down to, again, the full shutdown versus 2 lanes at all points, whether you want to see that construction extend into 2 year type of deal, or do you want to get it done quickly? It's really, it comes around.
Paul, John, do you have anything else?
Not on this subject.
Okay, okay. Meredith, as I think we said at a previous meeting, the goal was to provide you input in resolution form? Okay. And were you looking for that resolution to give you choice A, B, or C, or D, or also other input that's not on there? Right.
Yeah, right. And going to a little more detail.
Yeah.
For 3 weeks, stop Raj. So they had it. We go, okay, let's try this as well.
And I think we realize you're giving us conservative estimates. You don't want to overpromise because as you could have unforeseen circumstances. But I guess kind of the going forward, Nancy, if you can pass along to the Somerset Hills District and President Casella and Superintendent Giordano, I mean, whatever we can do in the next couple of weeks to kind of get together, whether it be separate resolutions or a resolution together, I think we want to give them as much of the voice of the populace as we can. So we want to work with you on that. Go ahead, Nancy. I know that there is at least a mayor's meeting coming up with Superintendent Wood in about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, Monday week. I know that's something we can talk about then because I know Mayor Muller will likely be there and Mayor Vallone. So certainly some of the stakeholders, but then I guess what we'd be also looking for is the Bedminster School District. Maybe we should have a subcommittee meeting either after that or in conjunction with that, because I would agree. I'd like us to see us all speak with the same voice, and I know the Township Committee is very interested in what the school is going to go through, because I think they're probably going to go through the most pain. Okay. We'll talk as soon as we're done, I guess, and figure out a date.
Well, I guess I still have a question about what that resolution would, I guess, what is the request for the resolution, Meredith? So are we saying, well, I like President Casella's alternative. That was pretty good to get it done in from
9 weeks,
from June and July.
Yeah.
There's a full shutdown or partial shutdown.
What?
DOT likes those types of bridges as well, where we can do them, we like to do those.
Right.
And then to get out, for instance, person wants to say this is a parking, you correct, I'm sorry, this is a parking, so we have that with them. And so we do something else.
And Raj, you did indicate that you were going to leave this meeting and you're going to, beat around the URS tables, whether or not there was any other faster construction schedules, and once again, focusing on the summer school vacation season.
We'll take a look at that. Right.
Okay, all right. DOT as well. All right.
Of course, has to be.
And any time frame that you expect to get back to us? Because that would, I mean, if we know that there can be a faster, realistic construction schedule, that would be very, I think, you see there's obviously a lot of tension in this room between having two-way traffic versus having a shorter construction.
What do you think?
So as soon as you guys could get back to us and tell us if a shorter construction is realistic, that'd be very helpful for us.
We'll take a look.
Okay.
And also a housekeeping item, I know we asked this at the Far Hills meeting, but can you leave the slides, and Trina, can you see if Vishant can put them on the website in conjunction with this video? Because I think the video, you're not going to be able to see it from the video, but if those PowerPoint slides can be in a file accessible. Okay. Okay, it would be beneficial, because I think the folks that aren't here would love to see what we all in the room can see, but you're not going to be able to see on the video. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And Meredith, I know you said this in earlier meetings, but perhaps if you could just briefly walk us through the schedule going from preliminary design discussions and taking it all the way through the next iterations until such time as you get to a final construction document, and also just to reiterate that this is a federally funded project and what you're...
Yeah, take us from here to 2019, real quick. And hand her the microphone so just, we can hear you, but...
So I think currently we're in concept development, which I think once we get the resolution and once we move forward, hopefully by the end of February or so, we'll be able to complete concept development and begin preliminary engineering, which would last about a year or so. And then from there, final design will be a year and a half, depending if there's no right-of-way, depending if there's right-of-way and permits. So 2018, summer of 2018, or if the permits and right-of-way, then it could be 2019. Because there's restrictions, because it's going to be cast in place, so we have to work in summer months where we can pour concrete and so we cannot work in winters for when it's cast in place. The superstructure will be precast, but the foundation and on the substructure would be all cast in place. So it has to be done in summer months.
There's also restrictions when we can work within the stream.
It's May 1st through the June 30th, so we cannot even work. So the cofferdams and everything, they have to be either built before May 1st or after June 30th. So that quite a few restrictions we have.
We're still a few years out.
No.
Fish spawning and all that. Any stream that we're working in, we cannot work from May 1st to June 30th. Unless we have, if we have the cofferdam before May 1st, then we are fine, because we will be working inside the cofferdam. So, and we have to go through the process, no matter what.
All right, last call, final questions before we wrap this up. Come on up, Nancy, or somebody hand her the mic.
Yeah. Just a little, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but okay. So if they're looking for a resolution from you all to say full closure, partial closure, and there are obviously advantages to either and disadvantages. I know that Meredith, I believe, had said that she might have other options for schools. Shouldn't that conversation happen before we make this final decision? That's my question. Okay, so based on, okay, so just based on the information that we all have, we need to make this decision.
Yeah, I tend to think that what we're going to get is the great idea that may come forth, may happen between now and 2019 during their, but they're giving us a worst case scenario, and I think unfortunately we probably have to make a decision based upon a fairly pessimistic schedule and only hope that it's better than, the result is better than what is proposed. But that's my thoughts.
And the fact that I'm asking that we either choose shutdown or a partial, we will work within the parameters of either one with the school district. So if they go with a full shutdown, or you all go with a full shutdown, then we'll work within those parameters to try to see where we can help alleviate some of the impacts. As was mentioned the first thing when we got in here, we may not be able to, so we'll try to see what we can do. And with the detour, well, that's the detour. With the detour, we'll look once again to see, and trust me, safety is always, and I hear you, I really do. We all hear you up here. Safety is our number one concern. And if making those turns, like I said, is an issue, then we'll have to revisit those detours. However, one of the things I kept hearing was that we aren't assigning that as the detour. So I get that it may take a little longer for you all to get to the schools, but if you can do that safely, that's our number one concern. Your number one concern is safety, but you're also looking at the cost, which we understand because that's your role, to look at the cost as well as the time. So we need to try to come together and work that out once we decide on the first thing we need to do, which is which one we're going to push forward. And once we get there, then we can get to the next, move on to the next issue. And it's a big one, we understand.
There's a lot of coordination, a lot of conversations that are going to be happening between the DOT and the communities as we go along.
All right. Well, Meredith, Raj, I want to thank you and the rest of your group for all coming out today. If you're going to be around for a few extra minutes while you clean up, perhaps some folks can ask some one-on-one questions. I think that would be nice. It seems like it's a long way from now, 2019, but we have friends in Bernardsville that have been going through a long construction process on Mount Airy Road, and we know that short-term, long-term stuff can be painful, and we've had a lot of bridge construction in Bedminster over the past couple of years, and it's good that we're getting new infrastructure. It's good that we're going to get this bridge replaced, but we all know it's not going to come without some pain, and we very much appreciate you guys coming out and answering questions and giving us options and listening.
Thank you.
And with that, I thank you all for coming out. Morning.